right now, the Comcast Business Hotline, Comcast Business Beyond Fast from NBC Sports Philadelphia. The great Jim Salisbury joins us. Hey, Jim, good morning, man.
Hey, Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Good to talk to you again. I'm sure your day was just filled with a lot of surprises yesterday. What do you believe to be the story here? Is it the Marlins taking the team vote, not incorporating Major League Baseball, or do you think Major League Baseball did have a say as to whether or not they're going to be playing the game on Sunday with knowledge of what was going on with the Marlins?
You know, I can't give you a definitive answer for a lot of reasons. But the biggest reason is I just don't know. And access to players and people and staff has been severely cut down in this new reality. So that's made information gathering not impossible, but certainly a little more challenging. So what I can tell you is the Marlins were aware of the positive tests they had Sunday morning. They alerted the Phillies. The Phillies alerted their players. The Marlins talked about it amongst themselves, wanted to play. And MLB was cued in. The game was, played. I guess you can question the wisdom of that. But, I think there's a lot of factors at work here. One, this is a whole new situation for all of mankind, not just, sports. And sports is just a subsection of mankind. And two, it was a 1 o'clock game. Had it been a night game, maybe things might have transpired differently in terms of conversations and decision making and whatnot. But they played the game, and Phillies came in contact, obviously, in close proximity with some of these guys over the weekend. That's the important thing. Is, excuse me. The contact wasn't just on Sunday because those players had tested and were removed from the roster. But, those guys must have been carrying this virus, in previous games in the series. In fact, I'm not going to mention any names, but you can cross-reference the names that have been reported. And, at least one Miami Marlin played a position that was in close proximity to a number of Phillies on Saturday. So you have to test everybody involved. And my understanding is, last night's game was a no-brainer to postpone, and I think in a lot of ways tonight's might be a no-brainer to postpone, though I haven't heard anything yet. But the Phillies were all tested yesterday. Their staff was tested. The results were expedited up into New Jersey, and I believe they got them back late last night, and I'm sure they're talking about it now. But my understanding, if there was, really any positive test, that was going to scrub tonight's game, but we'll see.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Speaking with Jim Salisbury, NBC Sports Philadelphia, even if they get the test back and it's positive or negative, you don't really know until a couple of more days because of the way they're doing the testing, correct?
The way they're doing the testing and the way this virus incubates. I mean, it's always dangerous when I start talking about science. I'm a sports writer, so from what I've heard, yeah, you can be exposed, and it takes a few days to kind of percolate, or whatever the word is, incubate, and then you might test positive. So yeah, there's a big worry here.
So that was gonna be my next question. Are you getting a sense from the Phillies camp that they are concerned, to say the least, about just playing a team that had 13 to 14 people test positive for it?
I think that would only be natural, but the handful of people I talked to, were concerned. As one player said to me, he was in close proximity of. They're all in close proximity on a ball field, But he mentioned that he was in close proximity to one of the guys, and it was in the back of his mind, like, oh boy, we'll see where this goes.
Right. Jim, I know you don't want to say it, but we'll say it. It's Garrett Cooper, who's the first baseman for the Miami Marlins that was infected, and he was playing first base on Saturday night, a night where the Phillies scored a lot of runs and had a lot of base runners. But besides that, the Major League Baseball, if Miami, and you say they did, Miami gets in touch with Major League Baseball, and I'm watching the interview with Manfred last night, and all we hear is protocol, protocol, protocol. He said it 1,000 times. Is there, to your knowledge, any protocol on how many players test positive on a team that you have to call a game or shut anything down? Because it seems very clear that there isn't.
No, I read over that 101-page document, but I have to tell you, it was probably a month ago when I read it over. But I don't recall seeing any specific number when you have to put the brakes on. But I do think that common sense was always the intention was common sense would always rule the day. So,
well, they're 0 for 1, Jim.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. Again, I think that's why we're seeing such extreme caution here in the early part of the week with, last night's games, 2 of them being postponed. And then, the Marlins are already postponed for tonight. Matter of fact, I don't even know if they've left Philly.
Yeah, last I know, I don't think they have, yeah.
There's 3 teams, there's 3 Major League Baseball teams in Philadelphia right now, the Yankees, the Phillies, and the Marlins.
Speaking of Jim Salisbury, NBC Sports Philadelphia, Jim, the other aspect here is there any sense, you think, in Major League Baseball that they almost have a relief that it's not a huge outbreak across baseball, it's an outbreak amongst a team, and that team happens to be from Miami that has not exactly handled this well? Does that at all give Major League Baseball, you think, a little sense of relief?
I would think that has to be factored into their conversations, right? Miami's a hot spot. And that team, actually, if you look at their schedule, they stopped in Atlanta and played a couple exhibition games on their way to Philadelphia. And there were, reports out of Atlanta, you can find them, that a couple of Braves players had gone into protocol either right after that series or during that series, including players that play positions where they're in close proximity to other players. So there could be an awful lot of factors here. What concerns me is the ripple effect. It just everything gets passed on because these guys have, they have connections with other teams through playing and all that. And then they're out in society, and I think even with all these precautions, and I'll tell you what, I've talked to a lot of Phillies players, and they're being careful. They really are. I mean, they're going home right after they're out of that ballpark in a blink of an eye. Like, we do these Zoom interviews with guys right after the game, and in ordinary times, guys sitting around in his uniform, he's talking to him in his locker, and these Zoom calls, we're talking 3 or 4 minutes. They're in and out of the shower. They appear in the Zoom call, and then they are in the parking garage driving out. So, they're taking every protocol they can, but I think this menace is just such that it just gets transmitted very, very easily. So it's a real, it's in the back of your mind. Bryce Harper, not really a mask wearer on the field. He donned a mask when running the bases on Sunday afternoon. I thought that was very telling.
Jim, did you notice during the weekend, because I thought it got a little, I don't want to say they got lackluster with what they were doing on the field, but it looked like Friday night beginning, Gregorius hits the home run and it's fake high fives. But then as the weekend goes on, there's bashing, there's high fiving, guys are touching each other. Did it get a little more lax over the weekend that you noticed?
Of course it did. I noticed that. I think everybody noticed that. I think it's only human nature. You start to feel a little sense of security, and then also the emotion kicks in. These guys are competitors, and when you do something good, you want to emote and celebrate. And you got Phil Goslin hitting 2 bombs. I mean, who doesn't want to hug that kid? You know what I mean? I noticed in one of the games, so it would have been one of the games they lost. God, everything's running together in my mind. But the kid Rosso was having trouble throwing strikes, and JT Realmuto goes out to the mound, and his instinct takes over. He's the leader. He's got a kid making his major league debut who's struggling. What does he do? He puts his arm around him. That's what a leader does. But it's hard. These are hard habits to break. It's hard to tell a leader not to lead. It's hard to tell a competitor who just did well not to celebrate. And boy, I'm really curious to see what's going to happen across the street when the big boys start pounding each other. This thing is really something.
Yeah, I look at it like this, and we listened to Rob Manfred yesterday on MLB Network, and then I also listened to Doug Peterson, and I definitely feel that the NFL world is looking very closely at the MLB world right now, considering they're in the same boat of not the same bubble, or they're not in a bubble, and they play a much more aggressive and physical sport than the baseball players. So to point that out, to go back to it, Jim, I'm looking at football right now as if they're putting baseball under the microscope.
I think everybody's looking at baseball, hockey, basketball, the restaurant businesses. Everybody's looking at baseball because baseball, jumps back in. Everybody's trying to see if it works. So, yeah, baseball's offering a template, and it's just a hard world we're living in right now because it's just tough to get your arms around this virus. It's going to do what the hell it wants. It's bigger than us all.
Jim, you wrote some great stuff for NBC, and you just did a great interview as well on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com with John Middleton. And one of the big sticking points here for a lot of fans is JT Realmuto Do you have confidence that he will be back here in Philadelphia? Is that confidence growing or waning over the last month?
I still think he wants to be here, and I still think they want him, and I think that's a good sign. But again, I hate to keep coming back to this pandemic, but that's going to kind of determine everything here, because to get any free agent deal, I mean, all salaries are dependent on revenues, and right now revenues are really down. So that's going to, affect things. I would think, and just again, it's always dangerous when I go down the science route, but and it's also dangerous when I go down the business route. But I would think maybe we need a vaccine to put more fans in the seats to help fuel revenues, and that would certainly help JT's cause of getting the money he's looking for in any city.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this then, because the other thing that goes into it is the Mookie Betts deal. Do you think that will have any effect on the type of deal JT Realmuto signs?
I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how JT feels about the Betts deal, at least the structure of it.
Okay.
JT mentioned that it was a good sign, and he said top players are still going to get paid. But that was such a unique contract because 1/3 of the money, $120 million of $365 million, is deferred without interest, and that has a big effect on what's called present-day value. That makes the deal, I think, a little more palatable for a ball club, but whether or not it's palatable for a catcher and an agent looking to set records, I just don't know. But, I mean, both Matt Klentak and John Middleton commented on the Betts contract, and they both used the word creative, so it kind of caught their eye from a management standpoint. And I did ask John Middleton if Betts' contract could be a roadmap to a deal with JT, and kind of implied in there is these deferrals without interest, that type of creativity. He suggested that maybe it could, but ultimately it's going to take two to tango, and we'll see how Realmuto's side feels about that creativity. I don't know how they kind of feel about it.
All right, Jim, I know you're a food guy. Could you settle a debate for us?
Unless it involves eggs. I don't eat eggs.
Wait, I never knew that. I never knew you weren't an egg guy. I know you're a great foodie. You're in your own right, especially ballpark food. But when it comes to the eggs, I wasn't unaware. We had a debate last week. Are chicken wings junk food?
Oh, that's a good one. It depends how much of the skin, that fat you cook off.
Oh, now that's a caveat we did not incorporate to our conversation last week, fellas.
I don't know. They're probably junk food. Yeah.
Oh,
they're good.
Jim,
they're good.
Jim, it's a meal.
Brilliant.
Oh, they're good, but hey, I got a smoker. I do some great wings on the smoker, man.
So when you do them in the smoker, there's no way that's a junk food. You're preparing a meal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not saying junk food can't be a meal. By the way, I mean I hit up that Popeyes on Front Street on the way to the stadium the other day. That was a pretty good meal.
Great point, Jim. Last thing for me anyway. You had the story a couple of weeks ago about JT and the $23 million a year, something like Joe Mauer's deal. To me, I would figure a more modern day deal would be more. Why do you think it stays along those same parameters?
I don't know that it stays along those same parameters. They've been pretty tight-lipped. All I can tell you is where they haven't been tight-lipped is making it known that they want to raise the bar on all catcher salaries. And the Mauer $23 million is the highest AAV, average value. It was actually a $180 million deal, but it was 23 over 8 years or something like that. So you look at that AAV, you look at the fact they want to raise the bar, you're thinking, okay, that's the bar. But, there's also been rumblings out of Realmuto's camp that Goldschmidt's $26 million a year could be the bar. And there's also been rumblings that it could be higher. And, players are always going to reach for the stars and kind of settle, a little lower. So I don't know what their ask is. We don't know what their ask is because they've been tight-lipped about it. But it certainly could be even more aggressive than those numbers that you're seeing.
Okay. There you go. Jim, always great catching up with you. For science, for biology, for food, finances, everything, Jim Salisbury.
So versatile.
We appreciate you coming on, brother.
No, baseball and chicken wings, but that's about it.
Thanks, Jim.
Jim, appreciate you, man. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Jim Salisbury, NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Mark Farzetta with Bob Cooney and Jamie Lynch. Mornings on 97.5 The Fanatic. Philadelphia.